Hi folks, I thought I would just run through the process that I tend to use for editing my photographs. Every photographer has a slightly different technique that we tend to develop over the months and years. I use Photoshop. Photoshop is an immensely powerful tool. So many different abilities. Of course, one of the things about it is within Photoshop, you can achieve the same task using many different routes. And we all develop our preferences. I'm primarily a photographer. I'm not hugely into photo manipulating or image manipulating to create completely artificial images. I like to enhance my original photograph, not to create something completely new. So if you're a photographer who likes to use Photoshop rather than an image manipulator, this is probably more aimed at you. So this is an image of Bangkok skyline at sunset. I took this a couple of years ago from the top of a sky bar in Thailand, Bangkok, having a drink, watching the sun go down. Now, the image straight out of the camera didn't look like this. What I'll do is this is my edited image, full size, the one I would use to make a print. And if I click over here, this is the raw image straight out of the camera. So click back again. There you can see there's a little bit of a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the process that I use to edit my images in order to go from something like this to something like this. And the first thing I will normally do is I will create a duplicate layer. If we go down to the layers menu, we can see there is just one layer in this, known as the background layer. So I will come up to my layers menu and create a duplicate layer. And it defaults to being called background copy. If I double click on it, I can rename it if I want, depending on how many layers I work with. I may either leave them as background copy 1, layer 2, layer 3, whatever. But if I end up working with 7, 8, 9, 12, 14 layers, then I tend to rename them for the specific things I'm using them for, in order that it makes more sense to me and I don't start to get confused. So I've renamed that one to Edit 1. And the first thing I tend to do is just use some of the automatic tools to look at how it actually changes the image, to say whether I like them or not. So first thing I'll go to is image contrast. It's just taking a while to build it. There's a fairly large image. Okay, so we're on the edit 1. This is the active layer now, and it's also, because the eye is showing, it's visible. So if I click there to hide it, I can see what my original image looks like. Click back again. And in this case, it's actually created very little difference. And this is one of the things about the automatic tools. They work reasonably well quite a lot of the time. And sometimes you'll find they make very little difference, and sometimes they make an enormous difference, for good or bad. So this is one of the many reasons I like to work in layers, because I can quickly look at how it's changing it. And you can see, maybe it's not terribly obvious on your screen that it is actually changing it, but if you look at the histogram here, and I'll just change this so it's showing the selected layer. So you can see the histogram up top here does actually change a little bit. Okay, so that's what changing the contrast automatically looks like. Let's see what changing the tone looks like. And again, I'll go down to my 2 layers and okay. And there's again a little bit of difference there, and if I swap between the selected layers, I can look at the histogram and you can see it's changing. Incidentally, if you get this little exclamation mark up in the corner of your histogram, basically what that's telling you is the histogram is based on cached data. So if you want to update it, you just click on that and there it's updated. Similarly, as soon as I go back again, it'll become cached data again, but that doesn't really matter as I haven't actually done anything to the image in between times. Okay, so that's using the auto tools in Photoshop. The next thing I will tend to do is I will create a third layer, and I may rename that in a minute, and I'll come across the filters and I'll use the camera raw filter. It's very similar to the tools that you'll get in Lightroom. And this takes a little bit of time to load. There we go. Okay, so the first thing I do is look at the white balance. And if I change that to auto, you can see it makes the image a lot warmer. And if you look at the two scales, it alters here the temperature and the tint. So if I go back and compare that to as shot, back to auto, as it's a nighttime shoot, I think I actually prefer the auto. But what I'll do, because the auto has both of, the as shot, should I say, has both of these scales on 0. So I'm going to take a little bit of what that shows there, because it does bring a little bit more contrast into the image, but just bring it down a little bit so it's not so extreme. Okay, and as soon as I start to move these, it becomes custom. Okay, exposure. Now this is a nighttime image, so if I try and apply the auto exposure to this, I know this is just going to go nuts, but let's do it anyway. Yeah, absolutely not what we want. Okay, so let's bring that back down, but what I probably do want to do is bring up the contrast a little bit, bring up the shadows to get a bit more detail in the shadows, and maybe just bring clarity up a touch. Okay, so it's just processing that now. Okay, so maybe I'll rename this Edit to Raw, showing I used camera raw filter. And how does that look in comparison? So if I just, yeah, and you can definitely see that is bringing out a little bit more detail in the buildings now. And if I compare it to the original, yeah, definitely more detail. And this is primarily why I use layers. What I could do is I could make these changes, and then to do a comparison, I could just simply go up to Edit, Undo, 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 Undo. But by the time you've gone back through 4 or 5 undos, in your mind, you've forgotten exactly what your edited image looks like in comparison with your starting image. The great thing about working in layers is I can do instant comparisons with my start image, or with the image, or with the edit that I had created just previous to this, or several steps previous, depending how far down the line I am. And equally, if you're doing very complex edits, and basically it all goes to rat shit, then what you can do is you just can click on the layer and delete the layer, and then you're back at your previous edit. Okay, folks, I think I'm going to stop here because 10 minutes or so of instructional video I think is probably enough for most people. There will be a part 2 where I'll continue on and show a little bit more about what I do to create the final image. In fact, there will probably be a part 3 as well to get to the final stage. So check back on my YouTube channel. The links will be up there.